Today we'll continue the flexible binding in full leather by preparing the cords for lacing on and preparing the boards for the actual lacing on in the next video. I'll start by fraying out the cords. There are a number of options at this point. What I'm going to do is untwist the plied threads and then tease out these individual threads. The cords I used are fairly heavy, and at full thickness they would be difficult to lace into holes punched with an awl. Also, I want to really fill these frayed cords out with paste so that they attach to the boards by both closing up the awl holes and by adhesive. If the book was done in an even older style, say with wooden boards, then channels would be cut to accommodate the untwisted cords and the ends of the cords would be pegged into the boards. The frayed out cords will spread out on the inside of the boards and will not require channels to be cut to accommodate them. Another option would be to only untwist the cords and not fray out the individual threads, but due to the cords remaining fairly solid, I would then cut a small V-shaped channel on the inside of the boards to accommodate them. If I was going to do this, I would have used the next cord size down. I'll mention this again later when I'm punching the holes in the boards. Fraying out cords is one of my least favourite jobs. It's a bit tedious. At the moment I can't even think of another job in bookbinding I find tedious. I'd rather sweep the floors and empty the bins. It's also why you should be really careful about not getting adhesive on the slips, the name for the cords at this point, in previous steps. Dried glue on the slips can make them almost impossible to tease apart. Some people like to use a blunt knife or the back of a sharp knife to pull the threads over them to fray them out. If you're using thinner cords, I think this can remove too much material. As you can see, I will remove quite a bit of material in this fraying out step. In this case, because I started out with thick cords, this is fine, even desirable. In books with recessed cords, where I've used the smallest cords possible, I'm careful about removing as little material as I can. In books, I've seen devices called fraying plates, which are metal plates with a slot cut in them that the cord is placed through and the cord frayed out against the metal plate with the back of a knife or a bone folder or a needle. So we're finally done, and if anyone does come across a genuine fraying plate or a comb designed to fray out cords, I'd love to hear from you. Anything that makes fraying cords, well, less tedious would be very welcome. Something I should have mentioned before now is that you should keep an eye on how straight and perpendicular across the spine the cords are. I use a band stick to keep them straight, A band stick is just a piece of smooth wood about 1.5 inches thick. It will get used when we cover the book in leather. There is a special tool with a difficult to say French name specifically used to push the cords into shape. Jeff Peachey makes and sells a drop-dead beautiful one of these made from brass. I can afford a wood stick. To finish the spine, I'll line it with a soft paper. I'm going to use 180 GSM watercolour paper. The use of a watercolour paper to line the spine is a tip that Glenn Malkin shared with me recently. The cotton paper is very strong and the softness means it will absorb bumps in the spine, especially the tying down threads of the end bands. You could even very lightly sand it after it dries. I apply PVA to the spine of the book and moisten the outside of the watercolour paper before applying it to the book. Moistening the outside of the paper makes it curl towards the spine and ensures good adhesion. The paper at each end extends over and past the end bands. I'll trim this up after it dries. I'll trim the boards to the correct height before lacing them on. I'll only trim them to the correct width at the foredge once the boards have been laced on and the slips pasted down and the boards are in their final configuration. I'll measure the height of the book block, which is hopefully the same all round, and then add 6mm or two 3mm squares to give the height of the boards. To cut the boards to size, I follow these steps. I trim the long spine edge straight, then trim the head square to the spine edge. I then mark the height and cut the board to the correct length. I would then cut the board to the correct width if I was doing that now. In this case, I'll wait until the boards are attached to the book. I use a bench hook to cut right angle corners. I push the straight edge of the board into the back of the bench hook and use a plastic square to align a steel ruler perpendicular to the straight edge. If I'm cutting to a mark, the mark will have been made with the tip of my knife, and I place the tip of the knife in the mark and slide the ruler up to the knife. To measure and make a mark, I put the edge I'm measuring from to my left. Since I usually trim edges on my right, after cutting the head square, I have to flip the board to put this edge to my left. I use a machinist's ruler where the end of the ruler is the 0 mark. I hold the ruler in my left hand with the 0 mark pointing to my right. I move the ruler until the measurement I want is exactly on the left edge of the material. I then slide the tip of my knife up to the end of the ruler until it touches, and then I push the knife into the board to make the mark. Following this technique, I can cut multiple boards to within a fraction of a millimetre or 1/32 of an inch or better. I'll talk more about rulers and knives the next time I have to cut board, but the main points are I use an Alpha 9mm knife with the standard blade and Toledo brushed stainless steel rulers. I'm just going to quickly trim the foredge of the boards just to make them neater and easy to work with, but they're not to width yet. I'm going to punch holes in the board with a heavy duty awl. I need to know where to punch the holes. I'll place the boards in position and mark with a pencil at the center position of each chord. I'll use a carpenter's square to draw a line in from the edge at each mark. The hole from the outside will be 10mm in from the edge, and the return hole from the inside will be 20mm from the edge. It's important to get the boards in position with the correct squares before marking the chord positions. This is why I triple check the squares as I go. The 10 and 20mm in from the edge is sort of arbitrary. Anything between 8 and 16 and 12 and 24 would work just as well. I'm sure a lot of professional binders in the past never even bothered measuring the inside distance, or maybe even the outside distance. I need to make substantial holes for the chords I'm using, which means a substantial awl. A piece of corrugated cardboard isn't going to do it for punching into either, and I use a piece of softwood for this. With a hammer, I drive the awl through the board enough to make a hole just big enough for the chords. For the return hole from the inside, I make the hole at an angle about 45 degrees below the first hole. I can estimate this by eye, it just needs to be close enough. The final job for today is to cut V-shaped grooves in from the spine edge of the boards to the first hole. You can use any sharp knife for this, but I like to use the Alpha knife as I don't have to expose more blade than I need. In the past I've used a paring knife, but the grey board blunts the paring knife, and a cobbler's knife, but it's a much bigger blade than needed. After I've cut the grooves or channels, I'll check that they are deep enough for the cords. I'd prefer not to squish out the cords from the shoulder to the first hole too much. If I hadn't frayed out the cords, I would also cut a small channel between the first and second hole on the inside of the boards, but the frayed out cords will squish flat. In the next video, we'll lace on the boards and finish trimming them to size, and we'll make a paper template in preparation for starting to work with the leather. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. As always, I really appreciate you hitting the big thumbs up button. If you are able and want to, you can support the making of more videos like this through Patreon or with a one-off contribution, and the details are in the description below. If you want to be notified of my future videos, please hit the subscribe button and select the notification bell. Until next time, cheerio!